Toad and Frog went for a walk, and they walked across a large meadow. They walked in the woods. They walked along the river. At last, they went back home to Toad's house.
"Oh, drat," said Toad. "Not only do my feet hurt, but I've lost one of my buttons on my jacket."
"Oh, don't worry," said Frog. "We'll just go back to all the places where we walked. We'll soon find your button." They walked back to the large meadow, and they began to look for the button in the tall grass. "Oh, here's your button!" cried Frog.
"No, that's not my button," said Toad. "That button is black. My button was white."
Toad put the black button in his pocket. Then a sparrow flew down. "Excuse me," said the sparrow. "Did you lose a button? I found one."
"No, that's not my button," said Toad. "That button has 2 holes. My button had 4 holes."
But Toad put the button with 2 holes in his pocket. And they went back to the woods and looked on the dark paths. "Oh, here's your button," said Frog.
"Oh, that's not my button," cried Toad. "That button is small. My button was big."
But Toad put the small button in his pocket. And a raccoon came out from behind a tree.
"I heard that you were looking for a button," he said. "Here's one that I just found." "Ugh, that's not my button," wailed Toad. "That button is square. My button was round."
But Toad put the square button in his pocket. Frog and Toad went back to the river, and they looked for the button in the mud. "Oh, here's your button," said Frog.
"Oh, that's not my button," shouted Toad. "That button is thin, but my button was thick."
Toad put the thin button in his pocket. He was very angry. He jumped up and down and screamed,
"The whole world is covered with buttons, and none of them are mine."
Toad ran home and slammed the door. There, on the floor, he saw his white, 4-holed, big, round, thick button.
"Oh," said Toad. "It was here all the time. What a lot of trouble I've made for Frog."
Toad took all the buttons out of his pocket. He took his sewing box down from the shelf, and Toad sewed the buttons all over his jacket. The next day, Toad gave his jacket to Frog. Frog thought that it was beautiful. He put it on and jumped for joy. None of the buttons fell off. Toad had sewed them on very well.